More than 20 local governments in Texas have been hit by a coordinated ransomware attack. Authorities say computer systems in 22 municipalities were infiltrated by hackers last Friday. The Texas Department of Information Resources has confirmed the attacks came from a single source, but have not provided the names of the cities affected or the attacker's demands. State officials are working along with federal agencies to try to restore access. The attacks in Texas come amid a spike in attacks against governments and businesses this year. Lily Hay Newman joins us now. She is a staff writer at Wired. Thank you so much for joining us. So, what is ransomware, first of all, and how does it spread?
Yeah, so ransomware is a type of malicious software or malware that locks you out of computers, basically. So generally, it's encrypting the computer so that all the data on it is inaccessible without a decryption key. And then the ransom aspect is that attackers say, if you pay us a certain amount of money, will give you that decryption key and you can get back into your systems. But there are other ways also that ransomware attacks can go down that involve sort of a denial of service of any sort where for one reason or another you can't get access to your systems and need to pay to fix the problem.
Right. So, for hackers, is this all financial? I mean, is that what they're ultimately after here?
Generally, in these types of situations, that is what they're after. And a big part of the debate is about to pay or not to pay, because on the one hand, it can be actually cheaper, especially for municipalities and other institutions with limited resources, to just pay to have it go away. And that is a really tempting option. But on the other hand, obviously, that encourages this type of behavior. And officials and groups like the FBI really strongly discourage institutions from taking that road. Also because there's always a possibility that the attackers won't keep up their end of the bargain and you'll pay the money and you won't get back into your systems anyway.
Well, what kind of damage do these attacks cause, and how does that affect taxpayers?
Right. It's different in different situations. I mean, a popular target for ransomware has historically been hospitals, and the type of damage in that situation could be something like degradation of patient care or really life or death type things. In situations like with municipalities, I mean, a type of damage can be that if you don't have the right backups, or depending on how the malware works, that you never get certain data back. That can be really damaging. But in municipalities, there's also just the issue of things like people being able to pay their water bill, court documents, court systems, can potentially affect law enforcement systems. It's different in different situations, but there are all sorts of types of harm that can come from not having access to these systems and networks.
So, when you talk about the Texas attacks, we're talking about 22 places here. What makes that particularly alarming?
Yeah, I think in this situation, the concern is that officials are saying that this was a single actor, and sort of that implies that this all happened at once and was a coordinated attack, or sort of, in some type of lockstep that led to a coordinated attack. And that is people are talking now in the security community about whether this is actually the first time we've seen that. We've definitely seen actors who are very prolific in distributing ransomware and launch a number of similar attacks over time. But it's really important to note, and for researchers to continue to look at, whether this is the first time a coordinated attack like this or of this scale has happened with ransomware.
So, the U.S. Conference of Mayors reported 22 ransomware attacks against governments in the first 6 months of 2019. And Malwarebytes reports attacks against businesses and governments are up 365% over the last year. What is behind that increase?
Yeah, I think really what's behind it is just that it's working for criminals, and people are paying. Enough people pay that it's worth it to them to continue. Also, there's definitely the question of criminals happening upon targets that are more vulnerable, and having success and then doing it again and again. So municipalities are a good example because they often don't have the resources or allocate the resources toward preventative defenses and sort of getting ahead of this. And again, that goes back to your question about taxpayer dollars. Should that money be allocated upfront to try to prevent something like this? Or then, how does it get spent once an incident hits?
I mean, so you just answered this next question, but is there a way for these state and local governments to prevent these attacks? Are they doing anything to counter these increasing threats?
There are definitely ways to cut down on risk. It's impossible to eliminate it totally, but I think it has been helpful that these incidents have become so high profile in the last year. The rates are increasing, but also this has been an issue for a really long time, and it's just that now more victims are coming forward and talking about it and talking about their decision to either pay the ransom or not. Partly that's because, municipalities, things like that, you can't really hide it when you're under an attack. So I think all of that is raising awareness and hopefully motivating institutions and municipalities to, take defensive actions and be proactive. But it's definitely an ongoing issue, and I don't think it's going to be resolved anytime soon.
Right, and perhaps with more publicizing of these incidents, maybe then municipalities might be in a better position to try to get some of those resources allocated to those prevention efforts that you talked about. Lily Hay Newman. Lily, thank you very much for your insight.
Thanks for having me.